What's up, Nets fans? Welcome to the Brooklyn Buzz. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Jac Manuell. How you doing, Jac?
Joe Harris, insert greatest sign, LeBron James.
He did play really well, and he knocked down his threes, and more importantly, he knocked down his free throws. Not something LeBron can say.
LeBron James is my favorite player of all time, but he certainly wasn't great today, and because of that, the Nets got the W.
Yes, 111, 106. Nets picked a W. It's 2 straight, a big win, obviously, for the playoff race because Orlando did win tonight. Miami did lose. Obviously, still a half a game behind Detroit. So before we break down the game, quick reminder, check us out, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. But, Jac, what do you want to get into first?
Well, let's go through the first half, Nick. 44-43, sloppy game, sort of 90s basketball with that sort of score. Nets obviously hold the lead at the half. How was it watching it? What went right, what went wrong?
I thought the Nets actually didn't play completely terrible in the first half. It was just a lot of they weren't making shots. They shot, I believe, under 40% and 20% from three. And then they kind of picked it up in the second half. There was a couple sloppy turnovers, but overall, I don't think the play was as bad as it seemed score-wise. They were just missing a lot of open shots. Obviously, some plays they could have picked up a little bit more. And it did help they were playing the Lakers, who missed their fair share of open shots. But I thought the defense was okay other than defending JaVale McGee.
Yeah, JaVale McGee, a near 30-20 night from him. But at the same, I know it's not necessarily something you say every day of the week, but we had our two boys putting up double-doubles of their own. So was JaVale more effective? Did Jared Allen and Ed Davis lack some physicality? What was it in that sort of terms with the center battle?
I think it was a combination of both, and I see a lot of Nets fans on Twitter going after Jared Allen. I don't think it's completely on him because if you're going to ask Jared Allen to help a ton on defense, guys getting beat off picks or driving to the rim, someone else is going to have to get his back and kind of box out JaVale McGee or not let him get so close to the rim. When you let a guy with McGee's size get next to the rim like he did, he's either going to throw it down or lay it in. This guy is super long, 7 foot plus probably, and then it's also something it was Jared Allen, Ed Davis not being physical enough, but McGee just had a ton of size in them. Not only in the height department, but in the weight department.
Yeah, he's a solid body, and he's had his time in Golden State. He's been a very good player. Early in the season, LeBron James himself was touting him as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Obviously, the time has changed rapidly since then. But a little tidbit, Nick. DeMario Carroll starting.
Yes, he did start. I think this was a lot of the LeBron matchup. DeMario was on him almost the entire game, it seemed like. There was different parts where Dinwiddie and Joe Harris ended up on him, but it felt like a lot of DeMario. I think that's the main reason. I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he carried over with this lineup. So, obviously, D'Lo, Joe Harris, DeMario, Rodions, and Jared Allen, which I don't mind that lineup.
I like it as well. There's been plenty of fans who have interacted with us on some of the live shows advocating for DeMario Carroll to be inserted as well. Will, who's been on the show, has been an advocate of that too. I think that we'll see DeMario starting at points throughout the playoffs if we make it. And
I think this is a playoff starting lineup right here.
Yeah, we'll lock it in and we'll certainly revisit that if the Nets make it. I'm still saying if because it's not set in stone. We still have an incredibly tough run. But other than that, Nick, the general rotation, the 9-man rotation, no Rondé, no Shabazz, despite the fact that he's healthy, no Trevion. Do you think, were you okay with that? Do you think that there's any reason behind it? What are your thoughts?
I think Kenny has shown in the past that he really wants to go to the 9-man rotation. Sometimes he'll go to 10. I think maybe matchup-wise, you might see Rondé or Trevion Graham out there, depending on the opposing team. They have a really dominant offensive player that no one else really matches up. We've kind of talked about this in the past. Rondé brings a different skill set at his size and athleticism, and Trevion Graham has done, a good job on guys like Kawhi Leonard. So you could maybe bring in Trevion or Rondé in certain situations. I don't really see Shabazz getting much burn unless there's an injury or the Nets are trying to rest somebody. Because if they were going to play him, they probably would have played him tonight.
Yep. It ends up being that way in a sense. And harking back to Joe Harris, Nick, obviously I could spend a 3 million podcasts talking about Joe Harris, but 6 of 8 from 3, obviously, hitting his free throws. In terms of the threes, he's been a little bit down in that sort of department. Were the Lakers defense a little more lax on him tonight?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Lakers defense was a little bit more lax, and also he was finding space and getting open looks. I think the Nets also did a better job of getting him more involved. It also felt like he kind of turned it up a little bit after he got smacked in the eye. So maybe Joe had a little extra edge to him too.
Yeah, it certainly saw that. And it's nice to see all over Twitter right now, D'Angelo Russell with Bleacher Report, Sports Nation, all these sort of places doing Photoshops of him. We'll have to obviously chat about him, but the poetic nature of him essentially eliminating the playoffs along with the Brooklyn Nets The Lakers out of playoff contention. What are your thoughts on that general narrative, I guess, Nick, before we get to D'Lo's game specifically?
This is not the popular opinion, but I honestly could care less.
Okay.
Like the Lakers have been knocked out of the playoffs for a couple of weeks now. You know what I mean? Like they're officially eliminated, but they're putting LeBron on minute restrictions. They've been resting him. Brandon Ingram's out. Josh Hart sat tonight. Lonzo Ball's out. Like they're not trying to really make the playoffs. So I just felt like it was kind of overblown. Obviously, it's a little plus for D'Angelo, I guess, and maybe the Nets organization getting a player like that. But it's not like this was the final punch that took them out of the playoffs. They've been out of the hunt for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, losing to the Phoenix Suns, losing to Memphis Grizzlies.
Getting blocked by Mario Hezonja, like, no offense, LeBron. I love LeBron, but, like, when he got blocked by Hezonja at the end of the game, like, I was like, okay, the Lakers don't even want to win games. This is a game, though, I felt like they wanted to actually win.
Should Hezonja be the MVP by the fact that he blocked LeBron James and he also dunked on Giannis? Like, he just have to do something against James Harden, and that just gives him automatically the MVP. I know this is we've spoken about Hezonja before on this podcast, but it's just funny just thinking about like Hezonja.
It's crazy. Like Hezonja, wow. He got DMPs this season, and then all of a sudden he has probably two of the most memorable plays of the season. Like obviously, I don't think the Antetokounmpo dunk was like actually getting like dunked on because I think it was like Antetokounmpo was trying to like chase him down, but the LeBron thing, that was crazy. Like I had to like double check the video like 6 times to make sure there wasn't a foul. It was clean as hell too.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear. I'm going to request a topic on the next NBA Outlet about LeBron James's his form post injury. I just want to hear a little bit about like your thoughts, Corey's thoughts. Maybe
I'll give you a quick thought on tonight. I mean, this was probably like one of the worst games I saw from LeBron, like energy wise. Like he didn't really have a lot of spring to him. Obviously, it looked like he might have possibly got injured at the end. He just like wasn't high energy. He was kind of careless. Like he really didn't care. Like 8 turnovers says that too.
It certainly does. And I think that you have LeBron James 5% more engaged. They could probably almost quite easily get this win. LeBron James is that transcendent in the way that he plays. And, he still nearly puts up a triple-double even when he is playing his worst version of his form. And despite his age, he is still a top 5 NBA player no matter what. But our boy Flatbush in Atlantic, we tweeted out the GIF to end all gifts with LeBron James. Oh, not LeBron James. D'Angelo Russell silencing the crowd with the shush. What were your thoughts on that moments from the wonderfully beautiful D'Angelo Russell?
I know, Jackie, loving him lately. Obviously building off the confidence he had in Sacramento, I think he's getting more confident in what he can do. And he does have these stretches in games. It seems like it happens a lot in the third quarter or the second half in general where he just gets really hot. And that run in the third quarter I thought was big. It gave the Nets a little bit of a cushion. They kind of kept that cushion most of the way. I know the Lakers took a slight lead for a bit, but that was important, I think, for the Nets to get this W.
Yeah, it really was. And I guess in saying that, let's delve into D'Angelo Russell's game with a little more detail. With Joe Harris, led the team in plus minus, plus 12 for him, plus 10 for Joe Harris. I look at the single game samples a little bit, and I think that this is somewhat reflective of, despite the fact 8 of 20 from the field, 40%, not too bad. 4 of 11 from 3, pretty good. A free throw, 13 assists, 6 turnovers, obviously, including that late one, which was a little bit careless, sort of reminded me a little bit of the Pelicans game. But overall, a really nice game from D'Angelo Russell. Again, I think he's third straight double-double.
Yeah, third straight double-double. Obviously, the other ones were a little bit bigger numbers, but I thought he was solid tonight as a floor general. I felt like he did a really good job playing point guard, especially when the Lakers were throwing some double teams at him off of picks. So I thought he did a good job with that. A couple times he did get careless with the ball. There was like 2 back-to-back turnovers, and like you mentioned, there was 2 in the fourth quarter as well. Clean that up. I felt like he got into his emotions or a little bit into that heat check when he kind of pulled up from 3. 2 of the 3-point attempts, though, I think he was trying to get contact. One of them, he definitely should have got free throws. The other one was probably a maybe. But, overall, I thought it was another good game and just really took control and set the team up. And I said this to you off air, like he easily probably could have had 16 assists if the Nets could knock down shots in the first half.
How was his driving game? We saw that on full display. Part of it was, the really poor Sacramento Kings defense, but was he able to get to the rim a little bit? Obviously, 1 of 2 free throws. He doesn't really draw a lot there, but did he still have an aggressive mentality, so to speak?
Yeah, he got to the rim a couple times. He wasn't finishing quite as well as Sacramento, but some of that is JaVale McGee and Tyson Chandler in there. So having 2 big bodies is obviously going to throw you off. But I felt like he did a little bit, but not as much as Sacramento. And I thought, like you said, Sacramento's defense was pretty bad, so he was kind of taking advantage. Also, the Lakers did a good job of giving him a solid amount of attention. They didn't want him to have a huge game.
Yeah, there was some moments when I was able to see a little bit of the game towards the end where Joe Harris was bringing up the ball and just allowing D'Angelo Russell to have some rest, so to speak, and then playing him off screens a little bit, which was kind of cool in a sense. But Nick, do you want to speak? I know we've spoke about this off air in terms of the amount of coverage that D'Lo got during this week. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to talk about it after we sort of delve into, say, Spencer Dinwiddie's game, Ed Davis, Karis LeVert still struggles? Do you want to focus on the game, or do we want to go to D'Lo?
Yeah, let's just dive into D'Lo right now because I think it's kind of like a body of work type of thing, like we talked about in the last show. Like he keeps getting better, and like a game where he wasn't necessarily amazing shooting. 8 of 20 is not terrible, but it's not great. Like I said, I felt like he did a really good job as a passer, and he's throwing elite passes on a regular basis. Like he's throwing no look passes to the corner, standing on the other wing. Like these aren't easy passes, and it's just like a flick of the wrist. And I don't think that he's getting enough, appreciation for his passing game.
I think the speed he throws his passes at as well
True.
is something that really goes underrated. Our Trey Young, Corey's boy, shout out to Corey, hopefully he's listened to this one, is getting a lot of praise for his passing. And, he is a tremendous player himself. D'Angelo Russell gets all this kudos as a scorer. I think, and warranted so, because he's a great shot maker, and that seems to be the thing. But it's almost like his passing goes under the radar, like you sort of mentioned, Nick. And listening to a podcast today, I told you off air that some of these general NBA media folk who don't watch the Nets as much as we do aren't giving him that credit, and they aren't even calling him, and I quote, he's like not an elite distributor. And I think he is. I think it's quite clear. If you watch D'Angelo Russell play game after game, he's having these high assist numbers. He's making the right passes. Yes, the turnovers weren't great tonight, but he's not necessarily forcing the issue like he used to. And I think that you have to recognize that growth rather than just being like, this is what he doesn't do well, and sort of buying into the narrative of what his archetype was. And now he's just like, oh, he still doesn't get the free throw line. That's just it. It just seems to me it lacks real deep thinking to sort of just go, this is what he is. This is what he does. He's making shots now. Cool. And I compare him to similar to a guy like Mike Conley. I compare him to him off the air, and both guys went to the same college, and I think both guys have similar games, but I think D'Angelo has a little more star potential. But Mike Conley is generally quite revered as a player, and due to his history, hasn't been an all-star, but is a really great player, has gotten paid as well. Well, I do think D'Lo has potential to be a better player, more impactful player, has been a really good clutch time player as well. So if we're talking about, guys who are similar in aspects, why does one guy get all this love as this sort of NBA darling, underrated, blah, 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 whereas D'Angelo Russell, 22, 23-year-old budding star, is it's so hyperbolic, one end of the spectrum or the other. There's no real in-between from a guy like, oh, yeah, I like D'Angelo Russell. It's either like you love him or he's a snitch, I hate him.
Yeah, it's like the narrative on him is carried over so much on something that, let's be honest, does not really matter about basketball. And if you really dig deep in the story, it's not as bad as everyone made it seem. So, like, I just feel like some of the narrative is just giving him a negative perspective that he doesn't deserve. And then I think it also is some of the stands, like, D'Lo's amazing, and they kind of overhype him a little bit, and then other people are so sour on him. It's like there's no in between. It's just kind of like respect his game, appreciate what he's doing, and pick up on some of the small details. Like, I think one thing that he's done a better job this year and doesn't really get much credit for, he's not an amazing defender, but he's definitely put more effort in on that side of the floor. Like, that's something that I think he's picked up on, and some of like the hustle plays he's willing to make. He's not perfect yet, but he's only 23, and I think that's an area where he's improving, and people are just like, oh, he's starting to hit shots that he didn't hit the last 2 years.
And that was another thing that Ben Golliver on his podcast said. He's just a bad defender. But he's in the right places a lot of the time. And it leads to the fact that these sort of games where he gets 3-4 steals. I think in the Kings game, he had 4 steals as well. He's in the right spots, and he is trying. He's pushing through those screens. He has size about him. I think that he can look at James Harden as a model to where he can be as a defender in certain situations where he focuses on being really elite. He has strength. He needs to fight through screens, obviously, those sort of things. They're going to attack him. He's never going to be elite in that area, but I think, the narrative around that. I will say, though, despite the fact that, he has shown some aggression in his driving, I don't think he's elite there. I think that it's silly to sort of mention that. I think it's to show the fact that, we're not completely biased about D'Lo. I think that the Kings game was sort of an outlier because they were so bad. And D'Lo can only drive to his left. He's not James Harden. He doesn't have the dexterity. He's not Kyrie Irving. He doesn't have the dexterity to finish with either hand around the rim. But if he's such good at the floater game, and if he at least has the aggressive mentality, it opens up the rest of the floor for him. So it's a thing that I would like him to work in the offseason. But for right now, the growth that he has shown has been absolutely enormous.
Yeah, I think developing a right hand something he definitely could work on. There's a play tonight where LeBron got the chase down block. If he went up with the right hand, LeBron wouldn't have been able to block it because he'd have to go through the rim. So that's an area where he just needs to get more comfortable, especially when teams start defending him like that. And like you said, he's never going to be an elite athlete that has that major burst. He's going to have to be crafty and kind of outsmart you to get to the rim. But with that floater, it kind of makes up for some of it and his ability to hit contested mid-range shots. So it's just kind of playing it. And I think it's like a perfect fire and ice combo when you have a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie who is super quick and can get to the rim with his burst.
And speaking of, Nick, nice little transition there. Spencer Dinwiddie, 9 of 12 from the free throw line. Obviously, he's just a master at driving. 4 of 14 in the field, not amazing, 2 of 7 from 3, but the dude, Dinwiddie knows how to drive.
Yeah, first half was not great, but third quarter, fourth quarter, he started to pick it up. And when he's getting those isolation situations, when he's feeling really confident, he can almost take anybody to the rim. And he's starting to do a great job. I think we didn't see this as much last year, but this year, a lot of the scoop layup where he's getting the ball to the backboard before the big can get the block on it. And I think that's really important. And I just love having Dinwiddie back to like attacking, and the free throws are just such a great thing when the offense gets stagnant or not knocking down shots. So if he can get his confidence 100%, I'm feeling a lot better about the Nets.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of D'Angelo Russell, I'm obviously on Twitter as we speak, Nicholas, via CJ Lawrence. At 23, D'Angelo Russell has become the youngest NBA player ever in the 500 assists, 200 threes club. The other guys in that are Steph, Harden, Dame, Lowry, Westbrook, and Tim Hardaway Sr. Some decent company there.
Yeah, Jack, it's not good because his efficiency numbers aren't high enough.
Oh.
That's what someone's going to say out there. I can almost guarantee it. But, like he's doing things. It's like I think Richard Jefferson said this during the broadcast. It's like every game we're talking about something, and the names being mentioned along D'Angelo Russell are all-stars or like all-time greats.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, it wasn't his best game tonight. And he's still putting up these efficient numbers. He's still impacting the game in so many different ways, which is what we sort of harked back early in the season. Obviously, I'd love to get D'Lo on the buzz and see if he's listening to us. But at the same time, he's just been awesome. And another quote from Kenny after the game talking about D'Angelo Russell. He's Joe Cool. He's just got a cool demeanor about him. Confidence, cool. I don't know what that is. I know I don't have it. I'm a nervous guy. He's just cool. Doesn't get phased. He's one of those guys who really enjoys the moment. Joe Cool. I would have thought he'd been talking about Joe Harris, but Joe Cool's a nice nickname.
Joe Cool makes me think Joe Johnson, who was just never showed emotion, just always cool into the situation, hit big shots. I think D'Angelo's like that. I will say tonight, though, I thought that there was a little bit of emotion and wanted to beat the Lakers. That's why he took some bad shots in the fourth quarter. But usually I felt like one thing this year, he's been a lot more under control and his decision-making's been a lot better.
Yeah, and that's one thing, he'll make mistakes, but he'll make up for it, with some hustle plays on the defensive end. I think there's been a few times this season where we've been surprised at his defense in terms of blocking and in transition, those sort of things. But to go on that negative sort of aspect, Nick, Caris LeVert, 18 minutes, didn't make a field goal, couple of rebounds, couple of assists, a steal and a block. What are your thoughts on Caris's struggles?
Jack, you're going to make me talk about this? No. It's honestly really tough. It's a struggle watching Caris because it's like he's mentally just is unsure of himself. He doesn't necessarily know what his role is. He's not very confident in his body. He's looked good, but the burst isn't quite there, especially getting past some guys, and he's not getting to the rim quite as quick or not getting up quite as quick. I know he's looked good out there, but some of the moments you can tell physically he's not feeling necessarily 100%. And like I said, mentally, not only is it like coming back from major injury, but it's coming back and playing in a role that is 100 times different than what you did to start the season. He was a high usage guy, having the ball in his hands a lot. Now he's not asked to quite do as much, and teams are really slacking off him on the 3-point line. So I think the biggest factor for him is just knocking down some threes. The one positive I'll say is he did have 3 assists, so his passing inside is still there. And I know we've talked about this, probably one of his best skills.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that I think that next season is going to be a really fun time to sort of watch Caris LeVert, see if he can get back to that early season form. I think he just needs a mental reset of sorts, but it's tough watching your boy struggle in that sort of way. But at the same time, He's still a rotation player in this sort of Nets lineup right now. And if he has to take a backseat role where he's playing 15, 20 minutes a night, I think it could be effective. And if it means narrowing that role, changing his mentality, this is Dinwiddie and D'Lo's team. And it is right now. We see them close games together, and that chemistry is something that has been really positive in the latter parts of this season. So there are some positives to take out of it, because it means that you don't necessarily have to worry about integrating Karras in that sort of sense. He can still play maybe in the starting lineup with D'Lo, but then you stagger the minutes like you've sort of spoken about, Nick. But hopefully we can see 1 or 2 games in this final stretch from Karras LeVert, even if there's some big defensive plays, a couple of big shots here and there, that gives him that little bit of confidence, that external sort of motivation, so that he can keep going, because we know what he can do. And that's probably the most frustrating thing for him more than any other. When you know how good you are and you know what you can put up and you're not playing at a certain level, it's similar with any sort of guy. Gordon Hayward as well. The guy is an all-star and is a top 30 guy, top 20 guy on his day. And Karras LeVert is was a most improved candidate. So I think that's the most frustrating thing. Your mind not keeping up with your body not keeping up with your mind. But we'll see how it all plays out.
It reminds me a lot of last year with D'Angelo Russell. And I think you might have brought this up in the past, or maybe it was Will, but just like coming into the situation, and that's kind of how it's felt. Like there's been good moments, there's been good games, and there's been other games that have just been really bad, like especially offensively and shooting, and the rhythm just isn't quite there. And I think, like you said, it's going to take the offseason to probably get him back to 100%, unless there's a blowout in one of these games and he's able to get up a ton of shots and he can get hot with his jump shot. Because I think if he gets his jumper hot, he'll start to get some more of that confidence back.
Yeah, for sure. And now, Nick, we have the Blazers, the Sixers, the Celtics, the Bucks, the Raptors, the Bucks, the Pacers, and the Heat. Are the Nets going to win another game this season?
I think so. We talked about this before. Not only do the Nets, their next 2 games are within a span of 7 days, so well rested. 2 days before each game, where it's a rare situation where you can practice and actually scout for the other team. A lot of times you're on a back-to-back, or you're traveling so much you don't necessarily get the practice time or the film room time to look at the other team as much as you can in a 2-day span like this. And also they'll get some rest before the playoffs, which I think is really big. And then we talked about the fact that maybe Milwaukee, maybe Toronto might be resting guys when the Nets play them, the first week of April.
And now that a lot of these teams have, solidified their spot in the playoffs, the Bucks, the Pacers as well, they've solidified their spot tonight, I believe, which Corey would be happy about. Corey's getting some love on this podcast. He doesn't get a lot of love from me, but he should be happy about that. But I think for the Bucks, Pacers, and Heat game, I'm going to be in New York for those ones. So maybe we could do a live buzz of some sort.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely are going to do a live buzz when they make the playoffs that I'm 100% confident about. But, I don't know about you. And to give you a little bit more confidence, Jack, before, this is halftime, I was doing a little research. Charlotte's next 3 games, Boston, Toronto, San Antonio. Not a good look for a team that hasn't really been playing well. Orlando has to play Philly, Miami, and Detroit. Miami has to play Washington, Orlando, and Dallas. Detroit has to play Portland, Golden State, Denver, and then their 4th game is, I believe, against Orlando. So a lot of these teams are doing damage against each other. So it's like a couple win-win situations for the Nets, which is really big when it comes down to a stretch like this.
It's going to be crucial. Obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on Detroit, Miami specifically, and to a lesser extent, Orlando. And I think Charlotte have lost it, like you spoke about.
I think Charlotte's done, yeah.
Like you spoke about Dylan Jackson on the outlet. It's always nice to hear his voice again, even when he is depressed about Kemba Walker and the rest of that franchise. Any final thoughts, Nick?
No, I thought, like we kind of hinted at the beginning, this wasn't necessarily a pretty game. The Nets weren't amazing. There wasn't, a stretch where you're like, wow, this team is next level. They fought and they clawed. They started to hit some shots. They pulled off the W. Guys need to play better probably for the next game against Portland and Philadelphia, but there was some promise. And I think anytime you get a win on the road, it's a positive.
Win is a win, and we needed this one more than any other.
All right, that wraps it up. As always, check us out, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, NetsRepublic.com, Dash Radio, and YouTube.